We're going to go live right now where members of CUPE are speaking after hearing about the ratification agreement. Let's listen in.
Christine Couture is the library technician from Ottawa, as well as the Francophone Vice President of the OSBCU CSCSO. And Michelle Campbell is an educational assistant and developmental services support worker, from the York region. On November 20th, Education Workers Central Bargaining Committee reached a tentative agreement with the Ford Government and the Council of Trustees Association. In an online ratification vote for the last week and a half, frontline education workers, many of whom have second or even third jobs, have had the opportunity to make their voices heard. That ratification vote closed last night. It has been a long road to get here for my 55,000 education worker colleagues. The provincial government thought they could play the same type of games with us that governments have used against workers for years. They thought they could divide us. They thought they could dictate terms on us. They thought we'd roll over, we'd suck it up, and we'd accept less than we're worth and less than our school needs. Instead, we stood our ground. We stared down this government. After a decade of being dictated to, we refused to back down, even when our rights to bargain and strike were stripped from us. We shook this province with our protests. We showed Ontarians that you can stand up to a bully for what is just and right. And we ended up with a deal that more than doubled the wage increase that the government tried to force upon us. Now education workers have spoken. 41,559 of our 55,000 workers voted in this ratification process, and 30,330 voted in favor of this tentative agreement. That is 73%. I could not be more proud of my coworkers, of the early childhood educators, custodians, office workers, maintenance workers, EAs, secretaries, social workers, lunchroom supervisors, library technicians, and so many more. I have spent every minute since I became the president of the OSBCU advocating for my workers because I know the need, the poverty, and the despair education workers have been forced into. It is my greatest hope that this deal begins to alleviate the need and shows workers that after years of being overlooked and underappreciated, that our work is valuable. I want to remind you how we got here. I stood in this very room 166 days ago on June 23rd, the day that we delivered over 30,000 letters from education workers across this province to this premier. Many of you were there that day as well, and I shared some sobering statistics then. That education workers earn, on average, just $39,000 a year. That after a decade of governments putting a finger on the scales to undermine the opportunity workers had of fairly and freely bargaining a collective agreement, we had less money in our pockets than in 2012. That more than half of all education workers have a second job. That over 70% of frontline education workers are women who see the gender pay gap widening year after year. Some of you and many in the public found these facts shocking, and I understand why. The very people who keep Ontario schools running, who keep young people safe, who keep students learning, have been pushed into poverty, pushed from their jobs, and pushed into despair. Those facts didn't fit the image that we have of our province, the wealthiest province in Canada. Now everyone knows the truth of what my coworkers are facing. Parents have long known that the status quo in our schools is not acceptable and that students need more support and more resources to succeed. And now all Ontarians know that education workers need to be treated better in order to provide service security for students. All Ontarians know that we have suffered a decade of wage erosion and that while the price of everything has gone up, our wages have not kept pace. All Ontarians know that far too many education workers, the backbone of our cherished public school system, are relying on food banks to feed their families. I'm incredibly proud of my 55,000 coworkers for raising their voices and making the truth known. It's not easy standing up in front of the media, the government, and the entire province and saying you're hurting, that you've been pushed around, and that you need help. It's not easy, but education workers did it. And we did it because my coworkers and I believe in the power we have to make positive change by speaking up together. Believe me when I tell you, We will never be silenced again. The last time we held a ratification vote in 2019, around 10,000 members voted in total. That's just about 18% of CUPE OSBCU education workers. This time, more than 40,000 voted. This is what democracy in action looks like. And this incredible level of worker participation, that's the story. Not just of the last 6 months since we started bargaining with this anti-worker government, but of the last 3 years as my coworkers organized and mobilized for this fight. Much has been made about what I think of this tentative agreement, about whether I believe it's a deal that workers need or the deal that students in this province deserve. I know that education workers, like childcare workers, nurses, midwives, other healthcare workers, are worth far more than we are paid. This is especially true because we do the work that is the foundation for all of the profits that are made by Bay Street financiers, telecom oligarchs, or grocery store barons. And I know that young people in this province deserve the world's best education system, one that meets their needs and provides services to every single student, no matter their challenges, so that they can grow and thrive together in the same schools with their peers. But here's the thing. What I alone think isn't the issue. It isn't today, and it wasn't around the bargaining table. This is not my fight alone. This is the workers' fight. What has mattered through this entire process is the voice of my coworkers. The Canadian Union of Public Employees Ontario School Boards Council of Unions, yes, that is a mouthful, our union is 55,000 frontline education workers. No more, no less. And the workers have spoken. I want to thank the entirety of the Workers' Central Bargaining Committee for their countless hours. To the workers who voted for and against this deal, thank you. Your energy and commitment helped drive this movement. But change is not only won at the bargaining table and in collective agreements. We are going to keep mobilizing, and I will keep fighting with you. We pried every improvement from this government that we could, this time. Tomorrow, we start to harness our momentum and start organizing for the next fight, because we have far more fight left in us, more left to accomplish. To the parents who joined us to demand improved services for your children, we've exposed this government's appalling track record of underfunding education. We have shown their reliance on generalized over-exaggeration. I will never stop advocating for your children. That continues tomorrow and every day, holding school boards, trustees, and the provincial government accountable. I don't take your allyship for granted, and my coworkers and I will continue to support your kids to the best of our abilities.